Right, if you have been watching Château DIY or any of my videos, you might have noticed the absolute kind of carnage in the garden and been wondering what on earth has been going on. Well, in a week, a new team will be arriving and they're going to be installing a new whole sewage system for the whole property. Now, we have a fosse septic, which is basically a sewage tank around the side of the property, but these aren't compliant anymore. So we've had to install a new system that's got 3 different tanks that will go around the front of the property, and then a pipe will be run round and there'll be a filtration bed installed pretty much where I'm stood. Now, the challenge we had was we were told that because the garden previously had a sort of a bowl, it sort of came down to a sort of a basin here, that meant that they couldn't build a filtration bed here because it would have turned into a swamp. So we had 2 options. One was to chop down all of the beautiful trees over here, which we quite like and didn't want to do. The other was to chop down all of the trees over there, and we really love those and definitely didn't want to lose those. So we were left with a bit of a dilemma on what to do with this filtration bed. Now, we originally, when we bought the place, had this plan that in 3 or 4 years we would build a beautiful pond in the garden, and we suddenly thought, do you know what, we can bring forward that plan, and it would mean that we only have to destroy the garden once rather than doing it 3 times, and we can use the earth from the pond to raise the level of the garden so that the actual filtration bed can go here, and then the water will kind of evenly flood out or spread out into the rest of the garden. So that was our plan. Now, we cracked on with this back in June, but unfortunately it ended up being a much bigger job than we realised and expected, because it turns out that with clay you can't use the normal building techniques that you would for kind of other types of subsoil. The amount of forces that are put on walls or retaining walls are much stronger when you have clay subsoil. So we ended up having to double the width of the walls, we ended up having to use lots more rebar and loads more concrete than we originally expected. And so the project has been a lot slower than expected, and at the same time we had to re-roof the stables, and we had to do loads of projects inside the chateau, both for getting it ready for guests, but also to make sure that it was going to be solving problems that were cropping up all of the time inside the property. So what we have done is we have down tools on the pond, and it means that every time it rains the sides crumble in a little bit more. But this isn't the end of the world, because hopefully, well, we dug the pool far too deep.
Oh, sorry.
Hello.
Is that for my morning run?
I was just telling our viewers about the pond and how they're going to be putting in the regeneration bed next week. But
septic tank.
The pond. Well, they're going to be putting in the regeneration bed for the sort of, it's not a septic tank, it's like a sewage system.
Oh, yeah.
Next week. But I was explaining why we had to kind of start work on the pond pretty much now.
Same time.
Yeah, at the same time. And why we've pretty much stopped, which was because we we just run out of time really, and it's been much more challenging than expected because of the clay.
That's an understatement.
But it's not the end of the world, is it? Because we dug it too deep by mistake. Not quite there yet. I feel like we got pretty good with the digger, but
you did. I got very bored.
You got very good with the dumper.
Yeah.
But it does mean that we dug it too deep, and at least with the sides caving in, it's sort of just doing a bit of the work for us. That's a nice way of thinking about it, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than
definitely.
looking at that kind of chaos and disaster zone every time. If you've ever seen the film Poltergeist, there's this scene at the end of it. Oh, Bo, you're right there. There's this scene at the end of Poltergeist where there's sort of a woman trying to climb out of, I think it's a swimming pool. It's a little bit like that, with like sharp poles all the way around.
It's deadly.
Like a bear
You
trap.
have to keep her away from it.
Yeah, you have to stay away from the pool now, don't you?
Anyway, I need to drag you inside. You've got work to do.
Morning. So over here we have a digger again. I love a digger. They're great fun to use, but I'm glad I'm not using it because it's really cold today, because they've been digging. So we've had like a little team working with us, like one of our most expensive projects, and they've been building this enormous hole here, which has got just down here an enormous tank in it, which is, I think, the main storage tank where a lot of basically the sewage from the house comes in there. It gets processed, settles, and then you have both away from there. Come on, out there. And then you have two separate tanks. Come on, out. Oh dear, what's she doing? Come on, round this way. So over here we have a big tank which does the majority of the do you know what? I don't really know how it works, but the idea is you have 3 different tanks. They all kind of do a different stage of the processing of the household sewage, and then it goes in a pipe all the way around to the garden where there'll be a filtration bed, and the filtration bed captures any final impurities before it then soaks away into the land. That is the plan anyway. So this is it. Would you believe it? They finished it in an incredibly short time. Super impressed. So under here, this is where you've got all of those enormous tanks that I showed in an earlier video. And then basically all of the sewage from the house comes in, and there's like a new manhole there. There was an existing one there, another one over there, and there's one around the corner, bringing all of the different pipes from the house into these tanks. And then there's a pump that pumps it, once it's all treated and it's basically just clean water, pumps it all the way around the house, past where the old sewage tank was, and then pumps it into the filtration bed in the garden, where it'll just filter out into the land. But yeah, particularly happy with the gravel. I was really worried it was just going to be kind of a mess, because it looked like they were using the gravel that we had before to sort of backfill around the tanks, and I was like, how are they going to replace all of that gravel? And they have. It looks amazing. The only thing I'm not so happy about is this pipe. So welcome any suggestions on what we can do about that. I'm thinking we might be able to turn it either into a bird table, perhaps. So you could paint it black and then put a little bird table on top. Or a light maybe, but that might just be a little bit more tricky to do. But yeah, it's hideously ugly. I think one option as well might be to dig a trench along here and build a wall and kind of incorporate it into a pillar in the wall. But that would be a big job, so maybe one for another year. Anyhow, better get on with work. I think it's down to the pit today.